Imagine this. A brilliant young engineer, just graduated from one of southern India's best tech institutes.
Yeah.
They've spent years deep in coding, AI, you name it. Their sights are set firmly on Silicon Valley innovation.
The dream, right?
Exactly. They land that dream job, tack everything into one suitcase, say their goodbyes, and then bam.
Bureaucracy hits.
Totally. They get tangled in this complex visa process, the H-1B system. That could mean months, maybe even years of waiting. Their whole dream just paused.
And this isn't some rare, unlucky case. It's happening to thousands.
Right. And now, on top of all that, there's this growing buzz, these whispers about maybe halting the whole H-1B program entirely. So, okay, let's unpack this. What is really driving this debate? Especially, considering Indian professionals are such a huge part of this program.
Yeah, the numbers are significant.
And what could hitting pause actually mean for the tech giants, for the people chasing that American dream, and honestly, for all of us benefiting from the innovation these visas help fuel?
That's our mission today. We want to cut through all the noise, peel back the layers, and really understand not just what's going on, but why it matters, especially to you listening. It really is fascinating, isn't it? How fast a rumor, maybe even an unverified one, can just ignite a huge national conversation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we're going to look at the recent sparks, dig into the history of the visa, weigh the pros and cons, and importantly, connect it to these bigger global tensions playing out.
So you walk away really knowing the full picture, the context.
Exactly. The aim is the big picture, the surprising details, the deeper context.
Okay, let's dive straight into what kicked this off most recently. Picture August 2025. These rumors start flying, especially on places like Blind, the anonymous site where tech workers vent.
Oh yeah, things can spread like wildfire there.
Totally. The buzz was about this supposed scandal at Walmart. Claims that some high-level exec took huge bribes.
Bribes? For what?
To prioritize hiring Indian workers on H-1Bs, basically pushing aside American candidates. There were whispers of millions changing hands to fast-track foreign hires.
Wow. Serious allegations.
Very serious. And then Senator Mike Lee from Utah jumps in. August 24th, he posts on X, formerly Twitter.
Right.
And he directly references those Walmart claims, asking point blank, is it time to pause H-1B visas?
And that just throws gasoline on the fire.
Instantly blows it up into the mainstream.
And it wasn't just him. Just a few weeks earlier, August 4th, Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia. Well, she went even further.
How so?
A really fiery ex-post demanding an end to Indian H-1B visas replacing American jobs.
Yeah.
And she explicitly tied it into other frustrations like U.S. aid to Ukraine, trade issues. It tapped into a much broader political current.
Okay, so you have these big claims, political figures weighing in. What did Walmart actually say about all this?
Well, they pushed back pretty hard and fast.
Yeah.
Statements went out to media, CNBC TV 18, Hindustan Times, basically saying, yes, there was an internal investigation.
It led to firing a vendor and a few U.S.-based employees. But, and this is their key point, it had nothing to do with H-1B visas.
So they're saying the probe was unrelated to visa fraud.
Exactly. They insisted the rumors were just, unverified social media chatter.
But did the denial even matter at that point?
Well, that's the thing. The narrative was already out there. The damage, you could say, was kind of done.
Right.
Plus, remember, earlier in 2025, Walmart had already gotten flack for layoffs, nearly 1,500 people. Critics were already trying to link those layoffs to foreign talent, even without direct proof. So the ground was fertile,
It set the stage for these new rumors to really stick.
Precisely.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This whole debate isn't happening in a bubble.
No, definitely not.
It's tangled up with these bigger geopolitical knots, especially between the U.S. and India. August 1st, just before Senator Lee's tweet, the U.S. announced another 25% tariff on Indian goods.
Bringing the total up to 50%? That's huge. Tied with Brazil for the highest U.S. levies on any country. 50%. Why? What's the official reason?
It boils down to India's oil purchases. They're continuing to buy discounted crude oil from Russia.
Ah, okay.
And the U.S. perspective is that this props up Moscow's economy, undermining the sanctions related to the Ukraine conflict.
So the tariffs are a direct response to that?
That's the connection being made.
Yeah.
You've even heard echoes from former Trump administration figures like Peter Navarro talking about secondary sanctions, calling India a laundromat for the Kremlin. Strong words.
Wow. How's India responding?
Not taking it lightly. Their Ministry of External Affairs fired back, calling the tariffs unfair, unjustified and unreasonable. They're vowing to protect their interests.
So you've got trade wars brewing, political accusations flying.
And all this feeds directly back into the H-1B debate online.
Yeah, you see those hashtags like hashtag pause H-1B trending. Lots of calls to prioritize American hires, especially for MAGA-G supporters. It's a really charged atmosphere.
Definitely. Which makes it even more important to understand what the H-1B visa actually is.
Right. Let's get back to basics. So think of the H-1B as like a temporary work pass, right?
Sort of a golden ticket, yeah, for skilled workers.
It lets U.S. companies bring in foreign talent for jobs needing specialized knowledge. Your software engineers, data scientists, that kind of thing.
Key point. Specialized knowledge. It's not for just any job. And it's temporary, usually 3 years, renewable for another 3.
It's not a green card directly, but it can be a step towards one later on.
Exactly. And there's that cap we mentioned, 65,000 standard visas per year.
Plus another 20,000 for people with masters or PhDs from U.S. universities.
Right, the master's cap.
Yeah.
So 85,000 total new visas each year, but the demand, it's way, way higher, which leads to the lottery system.
A lottery just to get a chance. And this whole system, it wasn't always like this, was it?
No, it has roots going way back. The Immigration Act of 1952 had an H-1 visa for distinguished merit and ability.
Okay.
But the H-1B we know today, that really came about with the Immigration Act of 1990, signed by George H.W. Bush.
And the goal then?
To help U.S. companies compete globally. This was the dawn of the big tech boom, the internet age starting up. There was a perceived shortage of specific skills.
So it was about filling those gaps.
Pretty much. And it fluctuated. Remember the dot-com bubble in the late 90s?
Oh, yeah.
Well, in 1998, they temporarily jacked up the cap way higher to 195,000.
Wow.
But then it settled back down.
So fast forward to now, fiscal year 2025. You mentioned the demand is high. How high are we talking?
Okay, get this. For those 85,000 available spots,
Yeah.
USCIS, that's Citizenship and Immigration Services, received almost 480,000 registrations.
500,000 for 85,000 spots.
Basically. So your odds, your selection rate is somewhere around 25, maybe 30%. It's incredibly competitive just to get picked in the lottery.
That's intense. And even if you get selected and approved, the path isn't smooth, especially for some nationalities.
That's a huge issue, especially for Indian applicants. While getting an extension denied is rare, now like 2%.
Yeah.
Recently, the wait for a green card can be brutal. Years, decades ago.
Decades. Why?
Because of per-country limits on green cards. Even if, say, 70% of H-1B demand comes from India, only about 7% of employment-based green cards can go to Indian nationals each year. It creates these massive backlogs.
So you could be working here for years, contributing, paying taxes, but still stuck in this limbo.
Exactly. It's a major source of frustration and uncertainty.
And speaking of Indian nationals, when we look at who actually holds these H-1B visas, India's role is, well, it's dominant, isn't it?
Dominant is the right word. They're not just participating, they're really the MVPs of the program, numerically speaking.
What did the stats show?
Recent USCIS data consistently shows Indian nationals receiving over 70% of all H-1B approvals.
70%. Who's next?
China usually comes in second, but it's a distant second, around 12%.
So why India? What's driving that huge number?
It really comes down to supply and demand. India has this enormous pool of graduates in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, math.
And U.S. tech companies need those skills.
Desperately, they argue. In FY 2024, something like 400,000 H-1B applications were approved, mostly renewals, mind you. But it just shows how deeply integrated these workers are.
I mean, who's doing the hiring? You're talking mostly big tech.
Yeah, you see the big names, Amazon, Google, Microsoft. They're consistently top H-1B employers.
Makes sense.
But you also see large Indian IT outsourcing firms like Infosys, Tata Consultancy Services, Cognizant. They're also major users of the program.
And the argument from these companies is, what? We just can't find enough Americans?
That's the core argument, especially for roles in AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity,
Right.
these really cutting-edge areas. They say the domestic pipeline just isn't producing enough qualified people fast enough.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into the benefits. What's the argument for the H-1B program? How does it fuel the U.S.?
Well, the proponents see it as critical fuel for the innovation engine. It's not just about filling jobs. It's about creating them.
How so?
The idea is that these highly skilled workers boost productivity. They start companies. They contribute to breakthroughs that grow the whole economy. It's not a zero-sum game.
Okay, explain that. How do they fill gaps?
Well, in certain STEM fields, there genuinely are shortages of U.S. workers with the specific high-level skills needed. The American Immigration Council argues H-1Bs complement American workers. They don't just replace them. They allow companies to expand, creating more opportunities overall.
Is there evidence for that, like historical data?
Yeah, there are studies. The National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, looked back at the 90s internet boom.
Right.
They found that foreign computer scientists, many on H-1Bs, directly spurred growth in that sector. It led to lower prices for tech stuff, good for consumers like you, and boosted overall efficiency.
Cheaper gadgets, faster innovation.
That's the argument. And look at founders. Think about how many major U.S. companies were started by immigrants or their kids.
Yeah, the numbers are surprising.
Over 46% of Fortune 500 companies in 2025 fit that bill. Many of those founders started their journey on visas like the H-1B. Think Elon Musk from South Africa, Sundar Pichai at Google from India.
Big names.
Absolutely. An analysis from places like the Brookings Institution shows how H-1Bs help keep regional tech hubs buzzing, Silicon Valley, obviously, but also places like Austin, Seattle.
And the economic impact, is it measurable?
People try to quantify it. One study estimated that expanding H-1Bs added almost $14 billion to national income back in 2014 alone.
Wow.
And they projected that could grow to nearly $150 billion by 2045 if the program was expanded.
And what about wages? There's the criticism about undercutting.
Well, the data on H-1B holders themselves shows they earn high salaries. The median is well over $100,000, often higher than most Americans in similar fields.
So they're not necessarily cheap labor in that sense.
Not typically, no. They pay significant taxes, they have high rates of starting businesses, getting patents, and some studies even suggest that by growing the overall economic pie, they indirectly boost wages even for blue-collar workers.
Can you give me like a concrete example?
Sure. Imagine an Indian H-1B engineer working at a small startup. They help develop a new life-saving healthcare app.
Okay.
That innovation, that app success, creates jobs for American marketers, salespeople, customer support staff. Jobs that wouldn't exist without that initial breakthrough. Without that talent, maybe companies like Apple or Tesla innovate slower and they lose ground to competitors in China or Europe.
Okay, so that's a pretty strong case for the upside.
It is.
But like we said, every coin has two sides. What are the main criticisms? What are the dents in the H-1B armor?
Well, the criticisms are significant, and they get a lot of attention. The big one is the argument that it's often used as a loophole for cheaper labor, undercutting American workers.
Even with those high median salaries you mentioned.
Yeah, the argument often centers on the outsourcing firms. While direct hires at, say, Google might get top dollar, critics argue that some IT consulting firms use the H-1B to bring in workers at the lower end of the required prevailing wage scale.
Ah, so gaming the wage rules.
That's the accusation. The Economic Policy Institute, for instance, points to firms like Infosys hiring thousands of H-1B workers, while also laying off tens of thousands globally, suggesting a pattern of replacing potentially higher-paid staff.
And that leads to the indentured servitude comment from Senator Sanders.
Exactly, because H-1B workers are tied to their sponsoring employer. If they lose their job, they have a very short window, like 60 days, to find another sponsor or leave the country.
Wow, that's immense pressure.
Huge pressure. It makes workers hesitant to complain about low pay, long hours, or bad conditions because they fear deportation.
So wage suppression and worker vulnerability. What else?
Job displacement is the other huge flashpoint, especially during downturns like the tech slowdown in 2025.
Yeah, when layoffs were happening.
People inevitably asked, why are we laying off Americans while H-1B workers keep their jobs? Now, proving direct one-for-one displacement is tricky. The Congressional Research Service notes how hard it is to measure definitively.
Because the economy shifts, right? New roles emerge.
Right. But the perception of displacement is powerful. And politicians like Congresswoman Green and Senator Lee tap into that, saying loud and clear, prioritize Americans first, especially when unemployment ticks up in tech.
Are there other systemic issues like fraud or abuse?
There are definitely stories about companies trying to game the lottery system by flooding it with applications for the same person through different entities.
Oh, really?
Yeah, U.S. has tried to crack down on that.
Yeah.
And then there are accusations against so-called body shops firms that bring workers over but then bench them without pay between projects.
That sounds awful.
It is. Experts, like some at Rutgers University, warn against just extending the program without fixing these issues, citing concerns about wage theft and exploitation.
And what about the impact on the visa holders themselves beyond the wage issue? You mentioned the green card backlog.
That backlog creates incredible stress. Lives put on hold for years, families separated, careers stalled. We saw that Reddit poll suggesting nearly half of Indian H-1Bs were considering going back home because of the uncertainty.
45% considering leaving. That's a huge number.
It shows the level of frustration. And you also hear anecdotal stuff online, like on X, people complaining about, say, Indian managers allegedly favoring hiring other Indians on H-1Bs,
Yeah.
creating these chains that some feel squeeze out local applicants. Whether that's widespread or just perception, it adds to the tension.
So, okay, we have the visa mechanics, the pros, the cons. How does this all tie back into those global tensions we talked about earlier? The U.S. India stuff.
It's deeply interwoven. You can't really separate them right now. Remember that huge bilateral trade figure, nearly $69 billion last year?
Yeah.
A lot of that relationship dynamic is currently strained because of India's Russian oil imports.
Right, the thing driving the tariffs.
Exactly. The U.S. sees India buying discounted crude, refining it, exporting it, and feels it undermines the whole Russia sanctions strategy. So these 50% tariffs hitting August 27th, they're going to bite hard in India. Textiles, pharma.
And India's perspective is they're being unfairly singled out.
Pretty much. They point to other countries doing similar things without facing such steep tariffs. It creates this diplomatic friction.
So how does that friction impact the H-1B debate?
It adds this layer of political calculation. If there's frustration with India on the trade and foreign policy front, it can easily bleed over into sentiment about immigration policy.
Like, why should we welcome their workers if they're not aligning with us on Russia?
That's the kind of sentiment you might hear, even if the issues are technically separate. But here's the potential boomerang effect.
Okay.
Pushing too hard on India could raise costs for American consumers, because we import a lot from there. It could strain a key strategic relationship in Asia needed to counterbalance China. And specifically for H-1B, a harsh stance or a pause could just drive that top talent elsewhere.
To Canada, maybe.
Or Europe. Exactly. Countries like Canada have actively courted skilled workers with clearer paths to permanent residency. If the U.S. becomes too uncertain or hostile, that talent will just go where it feels more welcome and secure. America could lose out in the long run.
It's a real balancing act then. Diplomacy, economics, immigration, all tangled together.
Absolutely. And it's not just playing out between governments. You hear it from all sorts of voices.
Right. It's not just politicians and policy wonks. What are we hearing from, say, the tech industry itself?
Well, CEOs like Elon Musk are very vocal defenders. They frame H-1Bs as absolutely essential for staying innovative, saying the domestic talent pool just isn't enough for their needs.
And we see articles like in Fortune highlighting the growing influence of Indian Americans in U.S. leadership roles right in the middle of this debate.
Yeah, their voices are becoming increasingly prominent.
But then you have the human stories, the ones that really hit home.
Oh, definitely. Like that Amazon hire we mentioned, the story that got traction on Reddit. Someone lands a $180,000 job, life-changing money, but can't start because of visa delays.
That must be agonizing.
It sparks a lot of sympathy, but also, fierce debate online. Because on the other side, you still have people on X and other platforms calling for a complete freeze, convinced the system is fundamentally broken and abused.
So, lots of strong opinions. Is there any common ground emerging? Any potential solutions people are talking about?
Yeah, there's definitely a middle ground being discussed. Experts are floating ideas beyond just keep it or scrap it.
Like what?
Things like more transparency in how the lottery works, stronger enforcement of wage rules to prevent undercutting, maybe even putting some limits on companies, particularly outsourcing firms, that rely too heavily on H-1Bs to encourage them to hire more diversely.
Okay, so potential reforms. But let's play devil's advocate for a second. What if the calls for a pause actually happened? What if the U.S. did hit the brakes, even temporarily?
The immediate impact on the tech industry could be pretty significant. A real jolt.
How so?
Companies scrambling to fill roles, key projects getting delayed.
Yeah.
You could even see stock prices reacting negatively. And remember those NBZR models. They suggest less innovation overall and potentially higher prices for consumers down the line.
And for the workers already here.
Huge uncertainty. It could trigger mass departures, either forced, if rules change drastically, or voluntary. Like that Reddit poll showed, almost half were already thinking about leaving. Imagine potentially hundreds of thousands heading back to India or elsewhere.
That's a massive brain drain.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And economy-wide, you're looking at lost tax revenue from these high earners and likely slower overall economic growth.
But the argument for a pause is that it would force companies to invest more in American workers.
That's the hope of the proponents, yes. That it would compel companies to step up training programs, maybe leading to higher domestic wages in those specific fields.
And globally.
It would almost certainly mean a talent shift. Countries like Canada, Australia, maybe Germany. They likely benefit significantly, attracting the talent the U.S. might be turning away.
Okay, so a pause has some really serious potential downsides. What about those reforms then? Instead of a blunt stop, maybe fine-tuning the system,
That seems to be where a lot of the policy discussion is heading. More nuanced tweaks.
like raising the wage floors.
Exactly. Make it truly expensive to hire an H-1B unless you really need that top-tier, hard-to-find skill, reducing the incentive for simple cost cutting.
Limiting how many visas one company can get.
That's another idea, yeah. To prevent over-reliance by certain firms and encourage broader participation. Also, streamlining the process for industries where skill shortages are demonstrably critical and persistent.
Has anything like this been tried already?
There have been attempts. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, put out some updates in 2024, aiming for more fairness, trying to combat fraud in the lottery.
But clearly not enough to quell the debate.
Evidently not. The fact that we're having this conversation, that the calls for a pause are so loud, shows that finding that right balance is still a major challenge. A balance that supports innovation, but also addresses the concerns about the domestic workforce.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from viral rumors and political tweets to global trade disputes and the very real lives caught in the middle. This whole H-1B storm, it really forces us to ask some fundamental questions, doesn't it?
It really does. At its heart, it's about balance. How do you leverage global talent to keep America innovative and competitive?
Without leaving your own workers behind or feeling like the system isn't fair.
Precisely. It's undeniable the program has fueled incredible tech growth. But the concerns about wages, displacement, fairness, they're valid and need serious attention.
Yeah.
And as these tensions, both domestic and international, keep simmering, I think the key for everyone is to try and look past the rhetoric, past the fear, and focus on the facts. How can the system work better, more equitably for everyone involved?
Because whether a pause happens or not,
Talent isn't going to suddenly respect borders in our connected world. How the U.S. manages that flow of talent, that's going to be critical for its future.
which leaves us, and you listening, with maybe the biggest question to chew on. As technology keeps accelerating, as global competition gets fiercer, what kind of policies do we need? Policies that don't just attract the best minds from everywhere, but also actively cultivate and empower talent right here at home.
Yeah, how do we ensure America continues to lead? And what does homegrown talent even mean anymore in an economy that's so fundamentally global?
A lot to think about there.